Hey guys, so tonight I wanted to talk about reparations because I know that that's a really light conversation that everybody can agree on. I have my cat in here with me now. She's right here. You probably can't see her, so if you see like an orange tail wave around, or if the microphone gets nudged, it's her. Right now she's sitting there, and I hope she sits there. I don't want to kick her out. Usually I record, I keep her out of the room and close the door, but you can see where the door is cracked. She came in here, and I'm just like, I'll just let her stay here. So anyway, reparations. So right away, if I put in the title of this video anything about reparations, I will get comments from people who haven't even watched the video talking about. Usually, these are the two things that they'll say. They'll say something to the effect of, no one owns, no one alive today owns slaves, and no one who is a slave is alive today. Or they'll say, black people own slaves too. And if I get that comment, then it means that they did not listen to this video, because that's not what this is about. Honestly, I don't really think most conversations about reparations really, I don't find them particularly interesting from either side. And I just don't. So what is the value of the conversation of reparations for me? Well, I think that's the value in of itself. The conversation itself has value. And the reason the reason I'll say that is because how I would frame the conversation. So talking about reparations in my mind doesn't start with 1619 or 1776 or 1865 or Reconstruction. It doesn't start with that. To me, the discussion of reparations starts with what's going on today. We start with today and we go back. So what we do is we have these moments in American history where we can say these things were markers of American prosperity, right? So we can say after, let's say, education system. So we know that up until about 50 plus years ago, you had clearly defined segregated schools. You still have school segregation now, but it's more in a clever way where you have it tied to property taxes and zip codes and everything. But not that long ago, even though Brown v. Education was in the 50s, schools in the South, which is where I'm from, they were segregated well into the mid to late 60s. And even when they started to integrate them, you had these segregation academies where you had white families who would move or take their children out of these schools and put them in these academies. And the reason this is important is because when you had segregated schools, the children who were going to the black children who were going to the segregated schools had older textbooks. They had lesser facilities. So these are Americans who were paying into a system in which they're not getting all the things out of it. So let's have that conversation. How much were they paying into this system? And this isn't a way back then thing. Both my parents went to segregated schools well into their late teens. So we can go with that. Then we say, well, what happened before that? Well, we had the expansion of people moving out of the cities, going into suburbs, and being able to buy homes. And these homes they were bought with money that was given to them through loans from banks where the government was subsidizing these loans. The government was subsidizing the building of these suburbs. So what you had is you had the government funding these things, and you had a segment of the population paying for these things. And once again, they're not being able to get the benefits of this. And the importance of this is that being able to move to other areas was your upward mobility. So you go to an area where you can get a better job, you go to an area where you can go to a better school, but that's not an option for groups of people. So that's that other thing, So we go back even further. So what was a big thing is that happened in 1944 was the what we call now the GI Bill. I think it's like the service members. I can't remember the exact name. It was in 1944 and it was Roosevelt. So what about the GI Bill? So the GI Bill was, and everybody, if you don't know what that is, basically it's you pay so much into the military while you're in the military, and you get to educational benefits when you get out. I actually used the GI Bill, part of the GI Bill, when I was doing my PhD. So I had it didn't pay for my PhD. I had the state paid for that, but I used the GI Bill to pay for housing, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the GI Bill, something that American citizens paid into and black troops and black soldiers paid into, they didn't get the benefits out of that. And there's actually something kind of personal for me with that, which I'll kind of talk about in the end of the video. and they didn't get the benefits of this. And this is why the GI Bill was administered on the state level. So a lot of states, especially those in the South, discriminated against black soldiers. And even if you were able to get the benefits from the GI Bill, if you didn't live near a black trade school or college, but you lived near a white university, you couldn't have gone to that white university. So, for example, where I live now, the flagship state university is maybe an hour and a half, is an hour or so away. Or let me say it this way: the flagship state university, where it is now, if you lived in there, you couldn't go to that school if you were black. But the black state school would have been several hours away. So once again, you're paying into a system you can't get the benefits from. Well, let's go back one step. I'm not going to keep doing this over and over. And this is not an exhaustive list, but we have the whole thing of the expansion westward. And kind of the irony of the expansion westward, where we were taking land away from indigenous people, is that a lot of that land or that fighting for that land was done by black soldiers, kind of unfortunately. But when they cleared that land, it was being opened for white settlers. And often those white settlers were immigrants from Europe, but it was not open to blacks. So the whole idea of like you can get land and you can start off and you can build something from it, that wasn't open to blacks. So the reason these things matter is because wealth is generational. It gets passed down, passed down, passed down. And this is not a thing that, that has to go back to 1865. This is something that can go back just a few decades ago. That's the discussion we need to have. To me, that discussion means more than any amount of money to bring those things out, to put numbers to it. So one way this affects me is both of my grandfathers served in the military. I have a family that served in the military, and a lot of the men served in the military. But my paternal grandfather was in the military in Korea, and my maternal grandfather was in the military during World War II. And the story I remember about my paternal grandfathers, so he comes back from Korea, and the town that he lived in it's a factory town, even though it's in the South, and the industry there was just getting started up. I'm not going to give specifics what the industry is, but the industry was just getting started up. Now it's world known for this industry. So when he gets there, all these troops are coming back, and they get these jobs working on the lines, working in management. These are the highest paying jobs, and the best thing he could get was sweeping the floors. So he goes off, he serves his country, he risks his life, and that's what he has waiting for him, right? So that is a private thing, but these industries and these whatever, they're being subsidized or they're being promoted by the government, a government which blacks are paying into. So for me, the discussion of reparations should not start way back then. It should start now. And the push shouldn't be so much the payment of reparations, but the push should be just the discussion, a serious, legit discussion that's public and done at the government level. Because when people start talking about, well, slavery happened 150 plus years ago, why are we talking about it now? My response is, I'm not talking about slavery. I'm talking about segregated schools. I'm talking about redlining. I'm talking about job discrimination. I'm talking about housing discrimination. I'm talking about things where we have the receipts and we have the documents, and people alive today can testify to it. Because if you want to hear about the difference between the white schools and the black schools, you don't have to open up a textbook. If I want to hear about it, I just have to go talk to my mother. Because until the last, I think 2 years of her high school, she went to a segregated school. But thank you.